I think the MacBook Neo represents two things that I want to talk about today. Number one is something that I think is important to remember when we're making predictions about the future of tech. And two is something I find very frustrating about Apple punditry in particular. And so let's start with predicting the future. So I think it cannot be overstated how notable the MacBook Neo is to someone who's been following the company for 30 years. I've been using Apple computers for 30 years, and this is a thing they have never done. This is a genuinely affordable laptop in a way that they've never done before. I don't think they've ever had a laptop that starts at $599, let alone $499 for education buyers, which is going to be, I'm sure, quite a few people purchasing this computer. To put this in some context, if we compare it to 2010 prices, like what is $599 from 2026 in 2010 prices when the iPad came out? If we go to the inflation calculator for that, that is $399. This is the equivalent to Apple releasing a MacBook in 2010 for $399, $100 less than the iPad. If we go with the education price, again, which is what a lot of people will be purchasing, $332 equivalent. And if we go back to we're going to get silly at this point. If we go back to 2000, we're looking at a $250 laptop. This is crazy cheap. And this is, I think, notable because it's serving a market Apple has never served before. Apple has always hung out basically at the $1,000 plus part of the market. And they've done really well there, obviously. I love their computers. I think they're fantastic. And I think the MacBook Pro in particular is just the best laptop you can buy, just full stop. And they've just never gone down market. And you've had this kind of ingrained in people's heads that Apple doesn't do that. Apple has no interest in selling affordable Mac laptops. And now they do, and they have one. And I think that it's notable that it's so notable that people in the Apple punditry were really struggling to wrap their heads around this, in the last year when the rumors started ramping up that this was actually a thing that was coming. There were people who thought that it was going to just literally be a part swap with the M1 MacBook Air. They were going to keep that thing going, but put different stuff in it. There were people who thought that Apple was going to make this new laptop, but they probably wouldn't sell it on apple.com. You'd have to go to Best Buy or Walmart or something. You'd have to go through a partner. They'd be almost like they'd be too ashamed to sell a computer at this price point. And not only are they selling it on their homepage, it is clearly the most notable product release they made last week. It's right at the top of apple.com. They have all these incredibly cool animations. They've gone full on with marketing for it. I know not everybody likes the marketing, but I think it's pretty fun. It's pretty nice. I really like when Apple just tries something that isn't literally the same thing they always do. I think that's fun. And yeah, it's a new thing. And so as someone who's been following the company for 30 years, this is a notable new product. This is a notable change to what the company makes. And I think it's just worth recognizing that, noting it, because, again, this is a thing we thought was never going to happen. This was a thing Apple had no interest in. Everyone else can fight over the scraps in the low end of the market. They're just going to play at the premium end. And that changed. And this brings me to what I think is a little frustrating sometimes about punditry in general, but Apple punditry specifically, which is there is this idea that it seems to be very popular that whatever Apple does right now with their hardware lineup, with their software lineup, with their just feature sets that they have across everything, that is exactly what they want it to be, and they do not want it to ever be anything else. They have no interest in doing more, and anything that's not there now, that's an intentional omission. There's no reason to do that, and they won't do it in the future, right? I think about this with mouse and keyboard support for the iPad, which it got eventually, even though it was railed against for years. And I think you see this, I think what makes it frustrating is that it will start as Apple should never do this. It would be a bad idea for them to do it. It would make their products worse. Then rumors start to come up that this is a thing that actually is coming. And then you start to see the punditry kind of shift, and they go from, well, maybe as long as they do it in a tasteful way or a good way, I guess I could be okay with it. And I'll give you a real example of what's going on right now. Touch Macs, my baby. I love this topic. I think it's so fun to talk about. And basically, the mainstream Apple pundit position for years has been touch on Macs is a horrible idea. It would ruin the Mac. It would make everything worse. It would not be a good thing. We should not add touch to Macs. Then, at the end of last year, we started to get these pretty significant rumors that a touch Mac is coming. Like, it's coming. The M6 MacBook Pros are going to have a touchscreen. And now you can see the punditry shifting, right? You can see them saying, well, I guess if they add it and it doesn't make my experience worse, that's fine. But obviously, they're never going to do like a full touch Mac. They're never going to do a tablet style Mac. That would be insane. That would be horrible. And they're not going to they've already changed the UI for liquid glass. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it will be okay. Maybe we'll survive. But they're obviously never going to let you use it totally with touch. Or like maybe they'll just let you use it with the Apple Pencil, but no touch, like no finger, like. So they're kind of in the they're negotiating with themselves. They're in the forget what's the stage of grief. I forget what it's called, but they're kind of like trying to justify They're trying to justify like, oh well, okay, so it's happening, so I need to kind of support it, but as long as it doesn't hurt me, that's fine. And then it's going to come out and they're going to be like, actually, this is awesome, this is so cool, but this is as far as they're going to go. They're certainly not going to make a tablet style Mac. And then in like a year or 2, 3 or whatever, we're going to get a Mac that looks very much like an iPad Pro, and they're going to be like, well, this was obviously a great thing. And I just think once you notice this trend, you will see it everywhere. Anything Apple doesn't make today is because they never want to make it. And as soon as there are rumors that Apple actually is doing that thing, you start to see the conversation shift. And then once it's released, they're like, I'm so glad they made this thing. What a great idea. And it frustrates me a little. You even see it with the MacBook Neo. Again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the MacBook Neo is a low-cost Mac. This is a thing that Apple has never done before, and therefore, a lot of Apple pundits said they should not do it. They were intentionally not doing it. It was a bad idea for them to do it, or it would be a bad idea for them to do it. And now that it's out, you can see everybody saying, well, this makes a lot of sense. This totally makes sense in the current day. And like, I'm not saying that a low-cost Mac in 2010 would have made sense. The hardware wasn't there. The Intel chips were too hot they were too low performance to like run in like that sort of configuration. It wasn't ready. And today things have changed, right? This is running on an iPhone chip, and it's probably going to have pretty okay performance. I don't even want to get started on what I'm seeing on social media with people posting bar charts suggesting that this is going to perform as well as an M4 Mac. Don't get your hopes up that high. But yeah, like, things have changed. Technology has moved on, the market has moved on, and now it makes sense to make this product. And I think that's worth recognizing. I bring this up, of course, because as I've previously talked about on literally last week's show, I think that once you have an iPhone, a folding iPhone that unfolds to iPad size, now you have an interesting software dilemma. What does that iPad-sized iPhone run? And we're going to see. We're going to see this fall, most likely, what the answer is there. But my suggestion is that maybe something will change. Maybe having an iPhone that is the size of an iPad will change how the software works between iOS and iPadOS. Maybe it won't. Maybe iOS will stay completely separate. Maybe this will have a completely separate multitasking interface. It'll be completely separate from iPadOS. But that seems weird to me. And so we'll see. I could be wrong, right? I'm not suggesting that every time I predict the future I'm right, but I think that if you are predicting the future, it is so boring. It is so it's not inventive, it's not creative, it's just boring as hell to keep saying they're just going to do what they've always done, nothing's going to change, the products will get slightly thinner, they'll get slightly faster, and this is what the world is forever. And I want people to remember that is not the case. So with all that said, let's talk for a minute about each product they announced. The Neo is the only thing that I ordered this week. I'm doing a trade-in, so I'm paying like $300 out of pocket for a new Mac. I think this is going to be an interesting Mac. It's the most interesting Mac they've released in a long time. We'll see how it performs. This is going to be my travel computer. I travel for work on a relatively frequent basis, and I need to bring my personal and my work laptop. So that's two 14-inch MacBook Pros, and that is, well, I'm not going to lie, that is a lot of weight. And so even though this is not as light as I was maybe hoping it would be, I am Going to make this kind of my personal travel laptop at minimum, and then we'll see what else I can do with it. Like if it really performs great, then maybe I'll use it more. So yeah, really interested in this. I think it's a really interesting product. The iPhone 17e. I think it is fine. I think the 16e was underrated. I have one. I think it's pretty decent. And yeah, I know you can buy a couple years old Pro phone. You'll get a better screen, better cameras. And that's true, but you'll get a worse processor that won't last as long for software updates. So it really depends what you're looking for. I think for a lot of people, the E line is pretty good. I do kind of wish they had a super affordable iPhone at this point, but hey. Also of note, the Mac desktop, Mac laptop, and iPhone lines all start at $599, which is just an interesting thing right now. So we'll go on from there. Oh, the other things, they added MagSafe, and the base storage is 256. Very happy about those. Then we have the iPad Air, which went from the M3 to the M4. Got a little more RAM. I think got better Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, and that's about it. And that's fine. It's not a super exciting update, but it's whatever. I do wish the screen was better on this thing, but at $599 as well. This is, I don't know. I think it is the iPad most people should default to, because I think the display in the base iPad is horrendous, and if you haven't used one in a while, you may have forgotten how bad it is. And I think the iPad Pro, while it is awesome, it's so freaking expensive. They've moved it up so far up in cost that like you really have to want it to get that. The one thing I think is really rough about the iPad Air is that it starts at 128 gigabytes of storage. That sucks. That really sucks compared to, again, their budget iPhone comes with 256. Their budget Mac at this price comes at 256. Like everything else of comparable quality is at 256 now, and this one's stuck at 128. So that's a bit of a bummer. The Studio Display, this is what a weird product. I think the Studio Display is for people who don't want, whose number one requirement for a computer monitor is not the display quality. They want 5K. That's definitely a thing people like about it. And they want it to look nice. They want it to have a webcam that's built in. They want speakers built in. And that's fine. Like it is interesting. It does break some people's brains sometimes why this product is bought by anybody. But it is, it is additional screen real estate you get at the 5K resolution. So while I can pixel double perfectly on my 4K monitor, and it's perfectly pixel doubled, and at the distance I am, it is Retina. It is more Retina on a 5K monitor at the same distance. So yeah, I get why people want it. I get why once you go 5K, I'm sure it's hard to go back to 4K. And yeah, so I get it. But man, this price, I really wish Apple sold a genuinely consumer grade laptop. Like this is, I feel like people talk about the Studio Displays as though it's Apple's consumer option. On basically anyone's shopping list for monitors, this is going to be $600 more expensive than literally anything else. You could buy the most incredibly spec'd monitor from someone else and still have like $600 to spare. The monitor I'm looking at right now is a OLED 4K 32-inch HDR capable, over 1,000 nits, 240 hertz refresh rate with variable refresh rate. It cost $1,000 out of pocket. This thing is $600 more than that, and for me, outside of resolution, it would be a downgrade. So yeah, I get why people want this, but it is it's a weird one, and the price I think is just insane. I really wish if this was $999, I'd have no real problems with it, or even like $1,100, $1,200. But it's really crazy for display tech that is literally from like their 2015 iMacs. The Studio Display XDR is the replacement for the Pro Display XDR. This is still an insanely expensive monitor, but at least in this case, these are properly high-end monitor specs on top of all the other things that you get with the design, the webcam, the speakers, and all that good stuff. So not for me. I'm not spending that much on a monitor, but I can see why for the right person, this would be pretty cool. I do know that Pro Display owners might be annoyed by this because it's technically the next iteration of that product and is for like half the price and comes with a stand, but also it is smaller. It goes from 32 to 27 inches, and it went from 6K on the Pro Display to 5K on this, so not a direct upgrade. Then with the MacBook Air, a boring update, just M4 to M5, which is fine. They did raise the price by $100, so the starting price is now $1099 rather than $999. They did kind of make up for this by making the base storage 512, which would have cost you $1199. So actually, if you were a 512 gigabyte hard drive purchaser, it's technically $100 less now, but yeah, the base price going up a little is annoying. I'm sure Apple felt that they could do that because now they have a lower end option that can hit those more price conscious purchasers. And then finally, we have the MacBook Pro, which is what I'm using right now. I have an M4 Pro. I do not plan on getting an M5 Pro, although it looks like a really nice upgrade. And yeah, this continues to be just like the best laptop you can get. So much power, so reliable, such great build quality, such a great screen, like just an outstanding device across the board. And I think it's awesome. So yeah, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for listening or watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.